I walked the streets again today. London this time, though it could have been Moscow, or Boston, or any old city that pretends to know its own age. The rain had just stopped. As I passed the Georgian terraces and the Victorian storefronts, I did what I always do. I looked down, past the modern pavement. And there they were, windows, whole rows of them, staring back at me from beneath the earth. Windows that should have belonged to a first floor, now half drowned in soil. Some are barred with rusted iron, guarding secrets too fragile for daylight. Others have been bricked up crudely, and some still reveal a faint glimmer of glass, catching what little light can angle down into their shallow burial. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of it. These buried windows were not meant to be underground. Their symmetry gives them away. Identical molding, matching arches, same proportions. They were built with intention. Which leads me to the question that has haunted my notebooks for years. Why would an architect build windows facing dirt? I ask myself this every time I find an entrance that was clearly once the second floor, now crowned with a staircase leading down to a half-submerged door. The official explanations always arrive quickly. Street raising, drainage improvements, urban modernization. Those phrases are easy to say. They dissolve suspicion. But walk these cities long enough, and you notice something else. The raising is too consistent, too widespread, too synchronized across continents that supposedly had no unified plan. And so the theory emerges from the dusted corners of forbidden archives, a possibility scholars laugh at publicly and whisper privately. What if the ground rose, not the cities? What if there was a flood of earth, not water, in the mid-19th century? They call it the mud flood. Some describe it as a massive liquefaction event, a sudden softening of the soil on a global scale. Buildings half submerged not by time, but by a single catastrophe, a quiet burial. But the part no one wants to touch is the timeline. Mid-1800s, right when so many inexplicable events ripple across the archives. I have spent years digging through old photographs and daguerreotypes. Too many of them show cities that look abandoned. Streets empty, no crowds, no carriages, no market stalls, just silent stone and lonely avenues. Some argue long exposure times explain the emptiness. Perhaps, and yet there is a feeling in those images, a strange, hollow calm, as if someone had pressed pause on the world. And then there are the orphan trains. Tens of thousands of children moved across continents in the late 1800s. Their origins uncertain. Their parents often unrecorded. Documents simply read, unknown, lost. No surviving family. Entire carriages full of children who seemingly appeared out of nowhere, redistributed across the young American states like puzzle pieces from a forgotten picture. What catastrophe leaves children but no memories, no names, even the architecture whispers. Buildings far too ornate for the populations supposedly building them. Massive stone structures in frontier towns that barely had paved roads. Architecture that looks inherited, not built. As if the 19th century was not an age of construction, but an age of repurposing. The inconsistencies pile up like sediment. History as geology. Our textbooks insist the past is settled, clean, catalogued. But the streets themselves contradict the pages. The stones carry their own memory. They do not lie. There is no proof in the academic sense, just observations, patterns, whispers. But sometimes the absence of evidence is its own kind of evidence. The buried windows remain, silent, staring up at us like the eyes of something ancient, waiting to be acknowledged. When I sit with them long enough, I begin to wonder if the mud flood wasn't just a natural event, but something else. A reset, a cover-up, a veil drawn over an older world that no longer fits the narrative we are taught to recite. In the end, I cannot say what truly happened in the 1800s, but I do know this. Cities do not bury themselves. Windows do not willingly face the earth, and history is written by those who survive the mud. As I close this entry, the image of those half-drowned windows lingers. They seem to whisper a final unsettling question. If so much of our cities is buried, how much of our history is buried with it? To understand the scale of what was lost, we must look at the world fairs of the late 19th century. Chicago, St. Louis, San Francisco, Paris. The official story tells us these massive Greco-Roman cities were built in less than 2 years. They say they were constructed from plaster and hemp, temporary structures meant to last only for the summer. Look at the photographs of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. The White City. Does this look like temporary plaster to you? Colossal domes, massive columns, intricate canal systems, electric lighting that surpassed what modern cities had at the time. We are told that men with horses and wagons in the mud built this magnificence in 18 months. And then, the moment the fair ended, they destroyed it. They blew it up, threw the rubble into the lake. Why? Why destroy architectural perfection? Unless they didn't build it. Unless these fairs were not exhibitions of new construction, but the re-inhabiting of an older, grander city that was found abandoned. Perhaps the fairs were just a cover story to explain the existence of these massive structures before they were demolished to hide the technology of the past. They called it the White City, but maybe it was just a ghost city. But the evidence isn't just in the cities. It is etched into the geometry of the Earth itself. Go to Google Earth. Look down at the Netherlands, Portugal, Japan, even the Statue of Liberty in New York. You will see them. The star forts. Massive, perfect geometric star shapes. The history books say these were built for defense. Bastions for cannons, they call them. But look closer. The geometry is too precise. The water channels surrounding them are too specific. When viewed from above, they do not look like military bunkers. They look like circuit boards. Some researchers believe these forts were never about war. They were about frequency, water, vibration. What if these structures were part of a global energy grid, a network that harvested the electromagnetic charge of the Earth and distributed it wirelessly? It explains why they are everywhere, from the isolated coasts of Florida to the plains of Siberia. Same design, same precision. A unified civilization, utilizing a technology we have forgotten or were forced to forget. And finally, we must address the scale. Walk up to the doors of the St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, or the Pantheon in Rome, or any Capitol building in America. Look at the handles. Look at the steps. Who were these built for? We are told humans of the 1800s were smaller than us due to poor nutrition. Yet, they built doors that are 20, 30 feet high. handles placed so high that a modern man must reach up to grab them. Why build for giants if there were no giants? The architecture mocks our size. We feel like children wandering through a house built for adults who are no longer home. Maybe that is exactly what we are. Squatters, living in the ruins of a greater ancestors, trying to convince ourselves that we are the pinnacle of evolution. But deep down, when you stand in the shadow of these colosseums and cathedrals, you feel the truth. We did not build this. We just moved in. So, what are we left with? We have windows buried in the earth. We have maps showing empires that no longer exist. We have photographs of empty cities, orphaned trains, and star forts that hum with a geometry we can barely understand. When you assemble these fragments, the picture that forms is not the history we were taught in school. It is something far more disturbing. It suggests that civilization is not a straight line of progress, from primitive to advanced. It suggests that history is a cycle, a loop. We build, we reach a peak, and then the mud comes, the fire comes, the reset happens, and the survivors, they are like us. They crawl out of the rubble. They find these magnificent structures left behind by the Golden Age humanity. They dust them off, they move in, and they invent a story to explain how they built them. We call them Roman temples. We call them state capitals. We call them world fairs. But perhaps we are just squatters in the ruins of giants. Think about the Library of Alexandria. Think about the burning of books throughout history. Why is there always such a rush to destroy the records of the past? Because if we knew the truth, if we knew what we were truly capable of, what we once achieved, we would not accept the limited reality we are given today. We would realize that we are not evolving. We are remembering. The evidence is all around you. It is in the stone blocks you walk past every day on your way to work. It is in the basement windows staring up at you from the sidewalk. They are waiting for you to notice. They are waiting for you to ask the question that breaks the spell. Who built this world? And where did they go? I will continue to walk these streets. I will continue to document the impossible. Because once you see the buried floor, you can never unsee it. Until next time, look down. The truth is under your feet.